Next we have Stefania giving a speech entitled Social Media. The speech entitled Social Media, please welcome Stefania.
Social media. I think it's the antidote to technology overload. A lot of people I talk to don't have that attitude. Social media is for kids. I don't do social media. Let me ask you, what is your best community, your best relationship? Family? Friends? That's a special place where people value you as an individual, value you in a unique way. It's your personal community. Why should it be so different in social media? If you use the model of social media as the like-minded community, not social media generic, everybody who's on my index book, or everybody whose first name starts with A, but rather a community of people who value you as the individual that you are and consider you special. Now, isn't that a really cool place to be? Now, I bring up that kind of unique community versus generic social community because oftentimes we think, gosh, you know, how can I personally be involved with people that I am not interacting with directly? Well, let me tell you that. Or maybe I should ask you. When's the last time you picked up the phone and had a 30-minute conversation with one of your friends? Now, I presume you have more than one friend, so that's a lot of time. Well, you can't, in today's overload environment, be in personal conversation with so many people, but you can take those 30 minutes and turn it into a 30-character text, and you've got that retention of the relationship. All you have to do is be yourself. You see, being the multifaceted individual that you are is what proliferates your community. And by being only willing to share your uniqueness with people that already value you, you're building your brand. The brand of you. Let me share with you a statistic you may not be aware of. There's been research done that Alzheimer's may not be at all a medical disease. It may in fact be a social symptom. They did some research with nuns, a series of nuns who lived together for a very long time, and a series of nuns who became less involved with their community. They noticed that the nuns that lived together and had these communal relationships with each other had very little symptomatic exposure to Alzheimer's. But when they died, as part of this research, their brains were evaluated, and they in fact did have all the plaque that evidenced the characteristic which determines Alzheimer's. In contrast, the nuns who didn't engage in social interaction actually did have symptoms evidencing their Alzheimer's condition. And when they died and their brains were evaluated, they were actually no different than the brains of the people whose social interaction prevented the symptoms from showing up. That's pretty significant. It's a social insulation. Maybe social media is truly the antidote not only for technology overwhelm, but the fact that we don't have time to build relationships in the old way of doing things. Maybe it's all about a new way of creating relationships of great value, a value exchange proposition. So why do I bring this up? Because you know that I'm very much organized in business. and this sounds like a social media conversation, what if you applied this logic to your business environment? What if you were careful to not generically provide information to all those people, but allowed yourself to participate only in a very unique community that you create? A community that values you. Alan Weiss is a friend of mine who happens to be a member of the National Speakers Association and probably one of the most wealthy individuals I know. He makes millions of dollars annually, single individual, in a consulting practice. Alan says that he doesn't communicate and share his intellectual property with just anybody. He shares it with his community. A community of people who already value him. And when he does, the community gives him feedback. They tell him what they want. They tell him what products he should offer. And when he decides to have a resort, an event, they all come. And they sell each other on how each of the other individuals ought to buy more of what Alan Weiss is selling. Within this little community, Alan has a vehicle for having the products he needed to sell told to him by people who are already predisposed and willing to pay for them. Social media is beginning to sound like one heck of an antidote to a lot of problems. And I have to tell you, I'm pretty excited about the idea. So it starts out with some questions. Question number one, if work were play, who do you want to be playing with? Who should be in your community? Start there, because it's the best fun place to create a community. And after you've thought about that a little bit, you have the opportunity to use free technology to establish yourself a nice little crucible, an incubator for packaging and selling your value. How am I doing on time? Pretty good? Excellent. Because I want you to know that I'm also Vice President of Marketing for ET. And I've been thinking about the fact that ET is a very special community. And I think that the more people who know about ET, the more we can have a very special retention of our community, but just bigger, a lot bigger. So I think we ought to use social media as a new tool for communicating to our potential candidates. The reason I bring this up is because as a project we can do together. It's something that I would like to have you help me with. I don't know too much about social media, but I do know that I love to play with my buddies in ET. And I also know that not everybody is yet a member of ET that deserves to be. And since they're not a member already, they can't know about us. Look at the parallels we're talking about. Just like in your community, until you share yourself, your multifaceted self, you don't actually end up creating the biggest value in the community that you can have. And so it is with ET. There are a lot of people who, if they really understood what we are doing, would be very excited about joining in. But they haven't gotten here yet. They don't know all the details that make us so unique in our little community. So they can't value us, and they can't buy what we have as packaged value. So my invitation is, if you are willing to learn about social media with me and create some value for yourself at the same time, using whatever we learn as social media, one, to create a bigger community that we already know we love, and two, to apply social media to create brand you. I'd like you to talk to me as soon as possible, and let's get the show on the road. Social media is the antidote to whatever ails you.
Thank you, Stefania. Next up we have a project from the Interpretive Reading Manual. The Interpretive Reading Manual is one of the advanced manuals which you can start working on after you've completed your first 10. So without further ado, we have Other People's Money by...
If I can please read
Yes.
the objection.
Yes. Sorry, my apologies.
So
Please,
since
prayers,
it's
read the
interpretive
objectives.
reading, it's a different type of speech that we normally don't see. And let's first briefly explain what an interpretive reading is. The purpose of an interpretive reader is to communicate to a voice the work of an author. The interpretive reader's goal is to intro the audience with a story that the audience isn't even aware of the reading. The reader makes the story come alive. And the main objective